Hi, this is Eli Ochiltree of the SnoKing Beekeepers Association, and it is our monthly meeting, August 16th, 2023. We're going to talk a lot about the fair, Varroa, and then just point people in the direction of winterization, which will be the topic of our next monthly meeting. A little late in some ways, but if the weather holds, maybe not that late. Varroa is the most important part of your winterization, so we definitely want to at least cover that a little bit tonight, even if it's by pointing you in the direction of links or talking about which methods of treatments you've used, are going to use, and we will, I know it's sort of like preaching to the choir. We urge everyone to get started on the Varroa treatments. Don't delay. And I'll talk quickly about that and then open it up for discussion. So, good. I see Anna on here to represent. Okay, and Walt, I see both of you. Actually, they're co-chairs. We say Walt. Walt, one thing I need to know is it's about time to start giving out your cell phone number, right? Is that okay? Because people are going to have to contact you when we start the actual fair a week from tomorrow. So if it isn't, you're going to let me know, right? Okay. You can put it in the chat if you need to. Okay. So I put up the signups, and I thought we should have this up. They're in your newsletters. The sign up for our club booth. And for our club booth, that's where you earn all the chances at prizes. And we've got some very impressive prizes this year. And we keep adding more on. Wade Erickson, if he comes on, he's negotiating some more with Guardian Bee that donated that suit that was one of the grand prizes last year. The jacket with veil, top of the line suit, triple layer, ventilated. Then that's our booth you earn those chances for. But the honey booth, a second. The honey booth inside is good because you get, actually, if you're working for Tim 80 actually, but we're really supporting him. He's the supervisor for the whole outdoor bee display and the indoor honey judging booth. And I think today is the deadline for online entries, but you can still walk in this Saturday, 10 to 5 p.m. And 3 of our journeyman candidates are going to be doing the judging. It's a great thing to do when you are going up for journeyman. For your service credits, it's a really fun thing to do the honey judging. So we got 3 people doing that. I think it's Heidi, Becky, Ann, Tammy. I think so. I think it's those 3. Last year it was Gina and Min. So, but that honey booth, you get 3 tickets, admission, and a parking pass for 1 shift. Ours, we can only offer you 1 admission ticket and 1 parking pass. So you have to work more shifts to get more admission tickets. Although sometimes we have extras if you have family that you need to bring. But that booth, for people who need to be inside, we think the heat's going to drop a little here, but if it doesn't, and you need to be inside sitting down, that is the perfect spot for you. We can always kind of transfer you over. We have a bigger tent this year, so I'm hoping that it'll be okay shade-wise for people. Then that's a separate link there. So that's the one that says honey in it. There's a 3rd sign-up link that I just added because some of you are not at all from this area. Going to the Monroe Fair doesn't make any sense, but you're going to do the Puyallup. If you're going to do the Puyallup, the Pierce County Beekeepers are running that. And if that's an easier way for you to help out, that's great. They've invited all of us, and they said, go ahead, sign up. I can give you Mary Dempsey, the president of the association's contact information. And that can be a really easier for some of you who are south of Seattle instead of north of Seattle. So free admission and parking is a big draw. Oh, also for the Puyallup Fair, it is an admission ticket and parking for a shift there. Oh, and the Puyallup Fair is a lot longer. It goes until September 24th. So those of you who might need your kids in school, your academic calendar, getting back on the 9-month academic sort of calendar schedule, getting settled back in. If you need to start after Labor Day, helping at a booth so that you can get journeyman service points, or because you love being with other beekeepers and talking about bees to the general public, then that works well for you. We end Labor Day. They start, I think, the 1st, which I believe is the Friday before Labor Day. You can do both fairs. We'd love to have you both places. This is actually a picture that's just in there. Oh, and t-shirts. If you work 2 shifts, it's all in the newsletters. And I put the links. I have the links, I think, coming up on the newsletters. Any information you need on the fair that we go through too quickly here, you can either email or I think call Walt or I. You had to already ask for t-shirts because Becky can't get them made this late. But you're still eligible for all of the prizes. Oh, and the quilt. The quilt is beautiful. I have it, and I'm protecting it. So, and there's other prizes that keep getting added. Wade Erickson, I don't know if he came on, and he might want to put in the chat if he just came on what the other prizes are. I know we've got books. We've got the napkin holders up in the right-hand corner, birdhouse, and people keep adding stuff. This is kind of fun. Here, links. So anything you need on the fair is probably in the 810 newsletter. That's the link. You can find that link on Facebook. And fair entry information. That's important. Tim came to our July meeting. So if you go to our YouTube channel and go to our July meeting, that's the link that would get you there. I can send all this out to you, or it's already on the Facebook discussion group, or we can put it in chat. We can enter it in there. Maybe after I stop talking, huh? We do have some of the queen line jars, and this is really late notice, I know. Should have put it in the newsletters. That we have some glass queen line jars that were donated to the club, and they would cost you like $3 by the time you get them shipped. But you're welcome to them for $2 each. Let's say a maximum of 6. And we have a box of 12, 24 that have the lids, and then another box that we might have to work to get the lids. The only problem is if you are entering honey in the fair this Saturday, you want to get it in the jar. And if you go back to that fair entry info meeting that Tim explained, you have to let the bubbles rise. And then he explained about putting a piece of plastic wrap on top to catch the bubbles and lift them off right before you hand it in. And of course, glass looks really snazzy, although plastic is acceptable, he said, if you have plastic queen line bottles, jars that are the 1 pound. Then there's the monthly newsletter I just sent out, which skipped over the fair info. You have to go back to the one that came out 1 week before that with all the fair info, or get a hold of Walt or Anna or me or someone. We do have extractors, and people aren't borrowing them. So I'm thinking those little 2-frame hand crank extractors are just too much, or everybody's so hot and exhausted from not being used to the hot summer. If you're a wuss like me and really are not very good at handling hot weather. Okay, but we have them, and there's one at the North Apiary with Ron and one down here with me at the Maltby Apiary. So Granite Falls and Maltby. Classes are sneaking up on us. Please register. We have to order manuals as needed. Oh, and the entries. I'm pretty sure it's tonight that you have to have entered online by or do walk-in entry, which is not that hard. And you can do that on Saturday for a lot of events, especially the honey. The other thing we need out of volunteers, and you just want to do it, I know, is we have this little area. Can you see the area that Walt's sitting in? And Walt had a great time with this. You can sit and do what Walt did, very casual, talk to the beekeepers, explain the parts of a hive, explain honey. We actually have the honey extractor there. We have smoker demo materials there. We'll have some kind of hive there that you could explain the parts of. You could just sit down. I mean, Walt just loved talking. As a beekeeper, ask a beekeeper questions and answers. People love it. If you would like to demonstrate the waggle dance, I'll join you. We can have a competition, a dance off. That'd be great.
The parts of the bee song.
And talking about the tools. That'd be great. And is Anna volunteering? Was that Anna coming on to volunteer?
No, I said you should do the parts of the bee song.
Oh, the head and thorax, abs and
Yes.
wings, abs and wings. Okay, we'll just do that routinely though, like every half hour. Okay, on the half hour. That just, just to get attention. Oh, and we will have some coroplex type wings so that you could show people how bees fly. Obviously, they don't flap up and down, and they don't like this, and they don't go around in circles. They actually have a way they fly. I'll be happy to send you Simon Reese's video link, and you can see it, and it's really neat. It's this kind of a figure 8 that creates lift on the down swing of the wings, which is kind of neat. Actually, I was thinking we could get a box fan and see what the kids thought of that. Besides, having a box fan on a day like as hot as it might be is probably a good idea anyway. That would attract crowds. And I wrote over what I wrote here. Oh, explain the difference between the queen, the drone, and the worker. Anybody want to stand up, 3 of us, and just say, I am the queen? No, I don't get to make all the decisions for everyone, but I influence every decision. I lay the eggs. Okay, and I'm the drone, and I got it easy until they kick me out. It would be kind of fun. I don't know if you hate role playing, you might not enjoy it. But then again, and I'm the worker. I have to do all the work. That's what happens when you're female. Anyway, okay. I did want to put some links in, so I need to leave this slide up a little bit because I'm glad you're thinking about winterization. I'm so happy you're thinking about winterization. And then Varroa is even more urgent. Varroa is right now. And I have a slide about why it is you've got to monitor right now. And even if you think you don't have any, keep monitoring. Don't wait like a full month to check again because it's a little bit deceptive. Your slide out board's not very helpful. Your alcohol washes can be off a lot. They're now admitting that alcohol washes can be very misleading. And I can go into that if someone wants to go into why they can be very misleading. You can have a huge result or an almost no result. Also, there is research right now out on why the Varroa populations jump. I did the alcohol washes every year religiously. I did it throughout the whole, and then just like everyone else, I had this population explosion of Varroa mites in my hives. And there's some research out on why that is, why it happens at this time of the year. So here's my pitch for don't delay your Varroa treatments. If you did one in the spring, great, you're that far ahead. If you've been monitoring, you're a little bit farther ahead. But the trick is this timeline here. I'm trying to think of how I could timeline this as a chart. Anybody artistic got an idea? You need your fat bees, as we call them, with fat bodies, which I can get a picture of if nobody knows what it's inside the bees, and they call it the fat bodies. It's not exactly fat, but it is. It's fat and lipid and protein and everything, and it's winter stores inside of worker bees. They have to be really well fed to have those fat bodies inside them. The mites have to be under control back in July. We are already we're over halfway through August now, just halfway. And for your fat winter bees to be able to do their job, live all winter long and raise the spring brood, you need to get your mites under control as soon as possible. It's never too late. It's always worth trying, even if you've stalled. Now, this is the reasoning, and this is the thing I really need a good diagram of. Healthy nurse bees can give you healthy fat bees, right? They sit there and they feed those little larvae, and that brood pheromone is screaming, feed me, take care of me, warm me, don't you love me? Okay, and so the nurse bees are frantically, hundreds of times per day, each larva visiting and making sure that those are fat, and they're just worker bees that are getting really well fed, and winter bees go into a hold stage. They don't finish maturing until closer to spring. They just get fat and happy and sort of sit in that preteen stage. That's the way I think of it. But those fat bees, we need them to emerge as late as possible in the fall. Last fall, I don't know how late they emerged realistically. Could have been October. Who knows? The beginning of November, the weather was incredibly good. We had a long, warm, dry, extended fall. Maybe not, but they might have emerged very late. But let's say they emerge about September 15th. The eggs that gave us those fat bees, the queen had to lay them back August 25th. Really soon now. But the key to having really healthy fat bees is healthy nurse bees. And the nurse bees that fed those fat bees, they already emerged about, well, no, I guess they're emerging right about now. We're not so late as I think. Okay, but they would come from eggs laid by the queen July 28th. If they are parasitized while they are developing, if the varroa mites are feeding on them as their larvae, and then again as they emerge as adults, they can't do their job as good nurse bees. So it's going to be harder for you to get healthy fat bees that can live through the entire winter and be in good enough shape to raise the first spring brood. Do that last push of energy as they give their lives for the hive, which is what all bees do, really. So looking at the bottom here, you need healthy summer brood in July and now in August to get that healthy winter brood in September, about then, I'm guessing, and this is up for discussion. And you want that healthy winter brood to give you the healthy winter bees, the fat bees, and they are going to help your hive at the end of the winter make healthy spring brood and get you going, give you that jump start of an overwintered hive instead of a nuke. And for those of you who've only had nukes and packages, wow, you won't believe the difference you'll see next spring. And then I have some slides here if anyone's interested on signs of dearth. We talk about it, and sometimes people go, what is it? Okay, that's a valid question. Signs of robbing, those awful yellow jackets. One big topic I wanted to mention is people are really worried about, do they have a queen or don't they? And should you find yourself without a queen, if you're thinking of waiting on supersedure, be very, very careful about that, because remember how long it takes to get your queens laying again, and you'll have a brood break when you're trying to raise winter bees, fat winter bees. So it's really critical that you get queen right now and maintain it. And are you queen right? That's a huge question right now. People are putting out a lot of money. The ultimate queen test, it's all I can recommend. You need to give the worker brood the chance. It's down there in the right-hand corner. I borrow slides from all my classes when I talk. The ultimate queen test. You're going to give worker brood to hive that you can't tell if the queen's there. Maybe it's too many bees. You can't have the hive open very long, or the yellow jackets are just coming in and landing right in front of you. So you can't have it open very long to hunt for the queen. You don't see the eggs. You don't see young larvae. So what can you do? You can test. You give the workers in that hive that might be queenless the chance to raise a queen. You add eggs or just hatched larvae. Actually, just hatched larvae is the best because they've got to take care of that right away. They can't ignore it. You mark the top of the frame. You come back in a few days, you'll see them. If they don't have a queen, they will start the emergency cells. And you've marked the top of the frame so you know where you're coming back to look. In any case, you've added some open brood, and that will stave off laying worker problems. The ultimate queen test can have 3 outcomes. You get emergency cells. They didn't have a queen. They raise out the worker brood. Oh, they are convinced they have a queen. Look again. Then the third possibility is they don't raise out any of those larvae or eggs. They cannibalize it all. They're in dearth. That alone can hide a queen, because workers simply refuse to raise out eggs or young larvae if they know they don't have the food to feed them, or they feel they don't have the food. So in that case, you'd have to feed them some 1-to-1 and a few days, then run the test again. and it would take you a little while to find out if you have a queen. But it is the best method. Even if you're an experienced beekeeper, you can't have your hives open a lot. It's super hot. The yellow jackets are just in my apiary area just won't stop coming in. Okay, I am going to stop there, okay? Because, oops, did I do something? I didn't lose you, did I? Stop share. Okay, great. Now I should let Walt talk because I kind of skipped from the fair. I'm really worried about Varroa. Everybody take me seriously, okay? You want fat bees. It's okay to be fat if you're a bee. It's a great thing to be fat if you're a bee because instead of living 42 days, you might get to live, 6 weeks. You might get to live 5 months. Okay, Walt, you ready to go? Did I talk enough? I'm off track now.
I guess I'm ready. Can you hear me?
I could use, let's see, is the volume up or did I turn my volume down? Hang on, can everyone else hear Walt? Is it a thumbs up? For Walt, okay.
Wait, all right. Okay.
Great, you go ahead. I'm
All
turning
right.
my volume up.
In regards to the fair, we've got 16 different people signed up as volunteers to work there. We've got most of the shifts filled. Now we're going to have some extra volunteers there during the time. I've got some high school seniors who need hours for National Honor Society. They're going to work the booth, use them. I shouldn't say use them, but put them to work. They're going to be there to hand out prizes for kids and do some other things. Just make them work, make them useful, get them going so that they really earn the hours that they're going to be there. Another thing, I was in my workshop and I was kind of bored, so I don't know if you can see it real well, but this is a little pin that I made. Let's see if I can get this up here a little. I guess I can't. It's a little pin that I made. It's made out of wood and my wife painted them, and everybody who's working is going to get one. I'm going to ask that they just be for the adults because they are really fragile. And if the legs break off, there's something that could be easily swallowed, and they will have a pin on the back. So I don't want kids playing with these. Once you get home and the fair's over, I don't care what you do with them, but during the fair at least. Additionally, if you find that you cannot make your shift for some reason or another, please contact me right away. The best way is send me a text. If I don't recognize a phone number, I don't answer it because like most of you, I'm getting bombarded with robocalls lately. I don't know why it's picked up so badly, but yesterday I had 12 spam calls. So
Walt, I just want to say, people, you're really dark on your picture. Can you put one more light on, or Anna find you a light? And then can we put your phone number? Would probably be a good idea to put it in the chat right now. I think I put it in the.
Is that better?
You've got a little light in the middle.
Is that better?
That's a little better.
I'm holding a flashlight. I'm just sitting in a dark corner.
Oh no. Okay. Ceiling light? Is there a ceiling light or anything? There you go.
I just turned.
There.
The problem is I'm backlit. I'm sitting in front of windows, so the computer is adjusting for it. Sorry.
No. Okay, go ahead.
Anyway, if you want to write it down, my phone number is 763-232-2963. Pardon me? Oh, my wife said, say it again. 763-232-2963. It'll be at the booth. So if anything happens, you can't make it, or you have to leave, give me a call so we can get somebody to fill in, or make sure that at least the people are there to cover it. That's about all I have, I guess, at the fair. We'll have a cooler there with water in it, which is really important, especially if it gets hot. That's for the people that work there. You'll have people walking up going, hey, can I have a bottle of water? And you just got to politely say no. Oh, the stage. If there's anything you want to talk about on the stage, or even just put the vest and the glasses and the antenna on and sit there and answer questions. People were coming up with some really interesting questions, and it's things that they probably would not ask, except they saw an opportunity to talk to some crazy old dude that was just sitting there. And it was a lot of fun. Talked to a lot of kids. A lot of people got some information on beekeeping that they had never known before. These aren't people necessarily that want to be beekeepers, but they had some questions. Additionally, and I don't think Eli covered this, but I will, if you sell honey, we can't sell anything at the fair. But if you want to bring a couple of jars and business cards, you can have them at the table. You can give out samples only to adults. You can't give them to anybody under 18 unless their parents are present. And you have to make sure the jars remain covered. Popsicle sticks are really good for giving samples of honey. So you can bring a bunch of popsicle sticks, just have a closed container that the empty ones can be put into. So we're not attracting other hornets and wasps and other nasties like that. But it's a good opportunity for you to get your product out there. I'm going to have a few things there. I don't sell honey, but I've got other things that I sell that are honey or bee related. I'm going to have a few things there in my business card. So it's an opportunity for us to do a little bit more outreach than just what the state fair is. At this point, Eli, I can't think of anything else. I'll be there quite a bit. If you have any questions about setup or takedown or basically what you're supposed to be doing, just get a hold of me.
Great. And setup is like 10, 11, whatever we pick on Tuesday, next Tuesday. It's a brand new canopy. I don't know how to, we haven't set it up before. It's still in the box. So I hope this is going to work. I'm counting on some muscle.
I read the instructions. It shouldn't be that hard to put together.
Okay. It didn't look hard, and it would look like the best canopy. It is metal, which makes it a little heavy. But yeah, so I know at least one person signed up. So, and to do that, we could probably use a couple more, and you just drive to get on when you're setting up on Tuesday. You do need your parking passes, if nothing else, to get into the parking lot the day of your shift. So we're mailing out the tickets and parking passes to the people who want me to mail them out. I am on the highway that's along the route to the fair. One of the main routes, 522, is the Bothell-Monroe Highway. Not that I recommend you really get caught in fair traffic, but sometimes you can't avoid it anyway. So you can stop by here and pick up your tickets and parking passes, or tonight, I promise, I will send out emails to everybody who is already signed up, or you can email me as soon as you sign up, if it's after tonight, and I will I can mail out your parking passes and your tickets to make sure you've got them. Okay, I don't know what iPhone is. What's iPhone 3T? You might have to email me. Somebody is iPhone 3T. Is that you, Steve? Somebody.
Okay. Eli, I've got to run. I've got some gluing up going right now.
That's not Steve.
So,
okay.
Again, anybody has any questions, contact me.
Yes. And there's a lot of information in that August 10th newsletter that went out. I tried to put everything I could think of in there, except I forgot to say that we have to mail your parking passes to get them to you. If you want to get into the parking lot and ask for, phone us to get the ticket, and we come out and bring you the ticket. But to even get into the parking lot is $10 during the week, $15 on the weekend. It adds up. The other thing is the feed store is a pretty good place to meet up too, or do drop off and pick up if you need to, although you have to walk across the fair. We're the blue gate. No, we're the red gate. The red gate, the red parking lot. People end up way over at the blue gate and have to walk across, but that's okay. And Becky, I have some of your t-shirt sizes you just put on there. I know.
Okay.
I know they were on the Excel spreadsheet, but I added them on. So some of them I have. And I'll help with the
Um,
emails tonight on that.
Okay,
Because you're down in Texas, right?
I am. I was out eating Mexican food and I was writing down all the names.
Okay.
Eli, are you going to be around tomorrow morning? We could drive out and get the tickets.
Oh, I got them today. I got the last of
Okay.
them today. There was a goof up. They're really shorthanded at the fair. Everybody's shorthanded. So I picked up admission one day and parking the other day. So I've got it. Need to email them out. If you're coming out this way, is there anything else we need to do?
Not that I can think of.
Okay, until Tuesday. I think we're probably good until Tuesday.
Yeah. But Ann and I will be out tomorrow morning to get the passes and for our students and.
Okay.
All
Right. Right. They need
Thank
the
you.
passes too. Oh, good. I picked up a few extra today. That's a good thing. Okay.
All right.
Okay. And you don't need a parking pass to come on Tuesday or on Saturday for the honey judging. And that must be Tammy on the iPhone then. It's either Tammy or Heidi, right? No, you don't need parking passes for that. And you honey judgers already have a 4:00 meeting with Tim, which we probably should just text him. Why don't you text him and just make sure you're still on for 4:00 for a quick meeting? Yeah, it's Tammy. By process of a deduction, I figured out it's Tammy. Anything else? Okay, so Tammy, you need yours mailed. Except you're coming out for honey judging. Ooh. I wonder if it would be just as easy to meet you out there quickly. I'll figure that out. So we're trying to make this as easy as possible on people. The parking trolley is working. If you end up in the wrong lot, I think the trolley eventually goes around to the other lots. If you end up on the blue gate side instead of the red gate side, think red, okay? Red, red, red. And we killed the fair topic and we could go on to more interesting stuff. I mean, I love the fair, but not everybody. If you can do a presentation, I do want to point out, even if you just get up there and do the Q&A, you are doing a presentation and that counts hour for service credit. Instead of 2 hours at the staffing the booth, now it counts 1 hour, gets you 1 service credit. Instead of 2 hours staffing the booth, gets you a service credit. And you need 35, so everybody's going to spend, like 35 hours at the fair, right? What else are you doing for, a week and a half? Anything else, Becky?
No, but because I've had to come to Houston for medical reasons, my daughter's doing the t-shirts right now. So I've only got a day to finish them up when I go back. So I'll really have to get those.
Okay, and everybody should, it's people who've already requested one, who already signed up. So I'll get those to you tonight. I think I have them on the Excel spreadsheet. Some of the names you sent me. I got the text, right? It was a text with the names you need. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Anything else on the fair? I know there's always a lot of questions, and we want to look forward to seeing you. Oh, in addition to having water, if anybody does have any leftover canned pop or anything that they would like to put in the cooler, sometimes you finish up a picnic and you end up with a whole bunch of pop you don't really want. I've had that happen. And if you want to bring some and throw it in the cooler for others, that's great. Shall we
How
move?
about 1952 Korean water?
Stephen is 1952. Official GI issue Korean water. Yeah, right. Mm-hmm. Just expired. Good for 40 years. What is that? No, good heavens.
So Eli, what do you need a hive at the or a prop type thing, or I do have a brand new waxed hive that I've been using for other purposes.
If you want to bring one that looks really nice,
Yeah, it's new.
yeah, and you don't mind, the only thing is, I don't know that we could promise to move it into the locked shed every night. So, and we've never had anything stolen, but it is possible. They have security there. So if you're willing to risk it, I go ahead and risk a lot. And so far I've been lucky. If you don't want to, well, I've got one new, actually it's the prize is the Man Lake Deep Hive, but it's absolutely bare, not painted. It doesn't look as nice as a dipped wax hive, which is, I know, looks really nice. So if you want to, it's great. One other thing we're going to have at the fair is, and Ron came up with this. Does Ron make it on here? No, I don't think so. Okay, Ron, because he works for RVs and such, he got a chance to get a 30-some inch TV that we can just plug the USB with the slideshow into the side of it, and it plays the slides. We can do slides from everything we're doing as a club. We can put some folders, and then it's got a little remote, and you can talk about queens if you wanted to, and run the queens we have known. I figured I'd make one folder of shots of queens, one folder of our queen rearing project this year, some others, maybe nuke installation. We have a bunch of slides from that, and do some folders like that, and they'll just kind of rotate through. Even I could figure out the remote control, so I'm hoping it'll work really well. Yeah, the powdered water. No, it's actual water, Micah. Steve has to tell you about it. Are you still trying to sell
Powdered
that stuff,
water.
Steve?
I sell one a week.
It's a perfect Christmas present. Yeah, right. Oh, the prizes. Oh, I didn't explain about the raffle because it's in the newsletter. So Jeff just pointed out I didn't do that. If you are paying your dues for next year, which if you're taking a class in September, October that starts then, you are paying your dues for next year. So you're automatically get one chance at the prizes. And if you are working a shift at the fair, you get one chance at the prizes. And last time it was a 1 in 50 chance to get one of the two big prizes. And this year we have a lot of smaller prizes too. So it'll probably be, I have to figure it out, but it's like a 1 in 50 chance of getting a sizable prize. Really. So it's not a raffle as such because it kind of falls under gaming commission. It's a membership drive, fair volunteer drawing. It is kind of a raffle, but not for cash money, which it is legal to do. And I understand it, but it's kind of ins and outs of how you avoid being gambling if you buy chances. And this seemed like a really neat way to reward the people who are helping. I think next year we should do it for apiary volunteers too. A lot of people put in hours, and kind of nice to recognize them. It's kind of more fun than buying chances. So the first person who gets their name drawn picks. Some people don't want, I can't believe it, but they don't want that wonderful quilt, or they don't want that. There's a whole Man Lake deep hive, the hive box with the frames, outer cover, inner cover, and solid bottom board. And Man Lake just donates when you ask for things. It's like we get free copies of Bee Culture and American Bee Journal. Even if you can't volunteer time at the fair and you happen to be coming by, come get some of the free copies of these magazines and such, and see if you ever would want to take a subscription. If not, you can get some. There's like 10 different issues, so you can get some pretty good reading material for our rainy winter before it starts. I can't think of anything else. Does anything else about the fair? If not, Varroa is a big topic, I know, and winterization. And the Queen project just kind of is drawing to a close. The last apiary date for me is this Saturday. Ron's looking for people who are interested in talking about winterization. And there was one other topic he was going to talk about. Oh, he was going to demonstrate his ProVap, the oxalic acid vaporization with the little tool that you just, it puts the vapor in for you. Instead of you standing there, making sure the wand stays level for a couple of minutes, this is the faster way. But not that we're recommending that for beginners, because for Varroa, one of the hardest things about Varroa is that you have to stay at it. You have to monitor. It really works best with a slide out board, bottom screen and a slide out board. It's a little more involved than beginners really need. I think beginners, from what I have seen, are more comfortable the first year putting in strips or pads or wafers or the gel tray, I think. I can talk about Varroa. Let me put up the links one more time for people who came a little bit late. Let me see if I can find the links. And they're on the recording at the beginning. For winterization. Okay, let me really quick. I'm going to share screen. Oh dear. I will figure out how to do this. Okay. I am constantly tech challenged. Let me see if I can find the correct page. Here it is. If anybody needs these links, we have monthly meetings that go through it. I'm happy to talk for the next hour on it, but is there a specific question? A lot of what we're looking at now is, can you get it done before the fall? Are you going on vacation? In which case, something like oxalic acid vaporization, that's one of the ways it gets a little difficult, is you tend to delay. And we want fat bees that are super well nourished by well-nourished nurse bees. And we want that. So we want to work as fast as we can right now on getting mites out of our hives if they're there. First of all, seeing if they are there. And I don't know how many people are using the alcohol wash, which is a good idea, or sugar roll. But if you already have oxalic acid vaporization, a lot of people are doing the 2 doses of oxalic acid vaporization 3 to 5 days apart and watching the drop. And if you see mite drop, especially with that second one, that is a better gauge, I think, than some of the alcohol wash.
What time of the year should be doing that again? Fall or early fall?
If you haven't done Varroa treatments up to this point, it's time to get moving. And there's a very good chance that if you haven't done anything until now, that the Varroa mites have built up. Unless you're extremely isolated. If you got nukes or packages from out of state, they probably came with mites. All hives are assumed to have mites.
I have a question.
Yes.
So I belong to these bee groups in Texas, Arizona, and several of them were talking about, what temperature in Arizona were they killing the bees? But several people made the comment, oh, this hot weather, Apivar is perfect. What does that mean? Why would it be perfect in hot weather?
I think you can use it up to a higher temperature. And I didn't put my Varroa chart up, but I think if you check my 9 treatments Varroa chart, and I hope everyone knows what I'm talking about, it's on the files under the discussion page. I use it in every class I teach. And if anyone wants me to, I can hunt a little bit and find it and put it up. But of those 9 treatments, only oxalic acid is completely not temperature dependent. And the 3 that I don't like, the synthetics, the organophosphates, etc., those are somewhat temperature independent. If the bees are moving around, you can use them. On the other ones, you have to watch. Formic, for example, when it gets above, depending on the form of formic you're using, there's two types, Formic Pro and Mighty Way Quick Strips Max. If you're using those, I think 80, 84 is the top temperature at which you want to use those. Read the directions carefully.
It's 85, Eli.
Is it 85? See, we're hitting
Yeah.
hitting the 90s over here. So right before this, going into the 90s, yeah. And even at 85, maybe you're running it close. Maybe your hive is in full sun all day or the critical part of the day. I hate to run it too close. So I think ApiGuard says up to like 100 or something, 100 and something. And we don't hit digits here. Anybody have it in front of them or just used it?
I think it's 95 for AP Life Bar.
That's the little black wafer tablet that you break apart.
Correct.
Okay. That's not ApiGuard. Both of them are thymol treatments. Thymols are known for sometimes causing a little bit of supersedure. Everything you use for a Varroa treatment is not great for the bees. Oxalic acid, it seems to be the least obnoxious one when it's vaporized. It really does. It seems to cause the least death. Formic acid, they say, wow, it's effective. Even kills under the capped brood. It'll kill Varroa mites. Yes, it also kills bees and brood. All it takes is being a little off on the ventilation isn't perfectly what it was designed to do. And if you read the formic acid instructions, they get really, really restrictive on, okay, you want the entire front entrance open, but you want the slide out board in, but you don't want any extra upper venting. And most people don't do formic acid exactly the way they're supposed to, but the heat thing will definitely be very hard on your hive. Both the formic and the thymols, the ApiLife bar and the ApiGuard that we're talking about, all are very volatile. And apparently that interferes with queen pheromone or directly impacts the queen herself. And they can easily start putting up emergency cells. They think they don't have a queen. They start supersedure. This is awful late in the year to end up without a queen. Again, this is why people talk nonstop about OAV, because it doesn't cause these problems. What else is there? HopGuard, you have to do it again and again. I noticed on the Apivar, when we were doing the Varroa treatment class here at the Malt Bee Apiary, I was surprised. You now could do 3 doses. An ApiGuard is the thymol that comes in the little gel tray that sits on top of your brood box, between boxes if necessary, but as close as you can get it to on top of your brood frames. If they're in 2 boxes, you'd probably kind of put it between if it's split and put it on the top of the box that has the most brood frames. You're trying to get that little tray, and it's this gel, and the bees don't like it. And just like the black wafer, that's the ApiLife VAR. Again, if you come out to like an apiary, we could show you things like this. It seems like there's never one good video that explains Varroa treatments. I need a photographer, and we could do it. We could put together a great Varroa treatments video going through each one of them and why you can't do it.
My girls took half the AP Life Bar wafers and shit canned them within 1 week. So
They had to
took
handle
them away.
it. Yes, and then you're supposed to put the next dose on in 7 days, 10 days. I get them confused. I have to be looking at the directions each time I use them if I use a different.
7 days, 3
Yep.
weeks in a row.
That's why you do it. Okay, so that's one of the ones that now says do it 3 times. They used to say 2, I'm sure. I really think so. Does anyone else for sure remember? They used to say to do it twice. These are soft treatments as opposed to the 3 I really don't like, the ones that the commercial beekeepers use. If you look at my chart, I put the 6 I like up at the top. The organic acids, HopGuard, and thymol up at the top. They're okayed for organic farming. You can't have organic honey, but you can organically manage your bees. And that's kind of nice because you can put on your honey organically managed apiary. You know, that's legit. we can't control where our bees go. So we never really know if the honey's organic, but we as beekeepers can do our best. I don't like those last three, but the commercial beekeepers love them. And if you have to use them, because you know you're not going to get into your 3 weeks in a row, get into your hives and change out that little black wafer that Steve is talking about, or for the Apiguard, I can't remember if it's 10, 14 days, again, up to 3 times, watching the drop on your mite board. If you can't do that, the long-lasting, slow-release ones are those bottom 3. And they can be done a lot of the year. I don't want them in my honey. It's just, that's my biochemistry degree talking there. Personal.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, Vicki?
I would like to share last fall, I was behind on treating for Varroa. So before we went to the WSU conference, one hive was full of deformed wing. So when I mentioned it at the conference to, was it Dr. Karen? He goes, you should just go ahead and kill him. And he said, but I know you're not going to do that. I said, no, probably not. So I treated him. At the end of winter, they turned out to be my strongest hive. So I'm glad I didn't do away with them. But has anybody else had deformed wing where a lot of the hive has it?
And had that recovery. That's the big thing, getting the recovery, staying on top of it. But then that was an extended fall too. You had a little more time than we usually have. That might have been a factor. And that was a really strong hive, right?
No, it was no. In
Was it-
fact, I thought it was going to die probably in the first cold spell. I figured it's going to die, but it didn't. And it turned out to be the strongest one. So I don't know why.
Was that the Russians? Was that Cruella or Olga? Or you named them, I remember.
I know. It was on the far left if you were looking at the hives.
Okay.
Becky, what did you treat him with to bring that wing virus down?
The only thing I had was oxalic acid.
Really?
Eli will remember I was begging for any kind of treatment, and they wouldn't deliver. Amazon wouldn't deliver to me in Washington. I could get it over in Portland, but not Washington. So I just, as long as he was telling me to kill him anyway, I probably did it every 5 days, sometimes every 3 days. And I thought either I'm going to kill them or they're going to get better. And they improved. I was shocked. I figured I'd open them up and they all be dead. My strongest hive did die, and it looked like nosema. So I don't know why, but it was just oxalic. The other stuff is so expensive. I'll tell you, it's hard to keep up with that. So I resort to oxalic acid because of my pocketbook.
When you get past 2 hives, then you start making this decision. I really think like the first year, it's a difficult decision to make. But after you get past 2 hives, past your first year, and the doses used to be $7 or $8 a dose. Now you're putting like 3 for some of these on, 3 doses. It starts adding up. And if you get past 2 hives, the convenience may be good, but maybe not. Maybe you need to jump. And Becky, I think you were up to 4 hives, and you had overwintered hives too, because you had gotten bees in the middle of the summer before in established hives, which is its own problem if you get established hives.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. And Ty's got a note about not treating nukes and packages. If you are, or is it any time that you are doing something where you're changing the hive around, don't let them settle in for a week first. Don't stress them or they'll abscond right away. Did that happen last spring, Ty?
No, I had 1 hive, but it wasn't because of that. That was a different thing. But they're so, depending on what type of bees they are, if it's the Russians, they're going to like bail out right away, where some of the others won't.
If you get real Russians,
Yeah.
And Russian, in case people don't know, is one of the few that you can get fairly purebred. There is a Russian Bee Breeders Association that actually sells the queens to you. I forget if the prices come down to is it come down to $50 yet? if you buy a certain number of them. So people who really want purebred something, they try Russians. I'm not particularly interested in it, but if you are interested, there is a Russian Bee Breeders Association, and they're the ones you go to get as close to purebred as you can, or actually purebred.
Bunch of commie bees.
Did you say what? That was not politically correct. Russian
They're
is an
commies.
ethnic group. They're an ethnic
Hey,
group.
Eli, I got a quick question.
Okay. Okay, Steve, can't hear you.
Hey, listen, what is the legal definition of bee food and selling it versus bee honey? I had some discussion with somebody about legalities because, as you know, I crush all of my bee pollen, bee bread, and honey together, and it comes out dark and heavy. And someone said that's bee food, and that you're supposed to label it as bee food if you sell it. Now, I sell it down in the street, you know, so I don't know if I really care, but what is the true definition, legality of bee food versus bee honey?
Okay, Steve does something very unusual that I don't know any other beekeeper that does. Okay, so Steve and I are always discussing this. Instead of using an extractor, decapping the honey cells and spinning it out in an extractor, or crush and draining just honey, Steve takes everything off a bee frame, including the bee bread and maybe some brood, squishes it all up, squeezes it through cheesecloth, and prefers that beehive product. I would call it a beehive product. And it is a raw material, so I think you're safe on the sales tax, but it is not honey, because to be honey, it has to contain honey and nothing else. If you add anything else in, you're mislabeling it. I can't think any way around that. So I would label it as a beehive product, including, and you're going to get more pollen that way. You're going to get more partially fermented pollen, which is the point of bee bread. And that could be better for people. I mean, people eat bee bread and they eat larvae in other parts of the country. But if you are forewarned, when you look at Steve's, and you do it in clear containers, they can see what they're getting. But if you put honey on that, you're mislabeling it, I think. Oh, good. Here's a question for Ty.
Okay, Ty, last year we had a discussion about the way you were, we're going to be getting to winterization soon. And I've been thinking about all the things that you presented, and I even tried to do some of the lids sort of like you did. And I'll say it cut down the condensation a lot. Did you have any success, or did you get around to it? And what are you doing this year? Because soon we got to be thinking about that.
Yeah, so I just wrote a report on it for the University of Montana master's class, and I found that I found an interesting thing going on when I had the smaller hives that were not insulated, are subject to significant temperature swings throughout the day, or between the days, and the more established hives, insulated or not, they're fairly steady. But it's the hives where you have, maybe 3 mediums or something like that on, that, they're splits this year, for example, that are coming up to speed. They're subject to a lot of temperature swings. And so I've insulated them. And when they're insulated, they're not subject to those temperature swings. So what I'm looking for is, the bees are not having to, manage the temperature, use so much energy to manage the temperature by trying to cool it or heat it, depending on what the temperature swings are. And I have a bunch of data on it, and I'm happy to share it. And I probably would do that later, a presentation that Eli would like to schedule later, on the findings and what I found. But I'm happy to share. You can see in the background, that's the apiary, and some of them are fully insulated. And some are not. So they're insulated below and above and on top. And they're very, very stable. temperature wise. And where the other hives that I have insulated, I'm getting lots of bearding, especially like today and stuff. The ones that are more stable, not as much or not at all. So it's interesting to see, and I don't know if it's right or wrong, but we're gathering data on it and we'll see how they go.
I agree about not knowing if it's right or wrong. So I have a question. We also had a discussion last fall, I think, or winter, I don't know, about allowing airflow. This last year, I cut out the airflow and it was more successful.
That's what I've done too.
Okay. And did you find success, or did you find
Yeah,
less
they're going
condensation?
gangbusters.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not having moisture problems in the hives.
Mhm.
But again, it's doubly thick on the top and only singly thick on the sides. So you're really going against it raining down onto the bees by letting the sides cool and the water condense on the sides and then run down the sides and out the bottom.
And have you had any concerns with mice?
Nope.
I know you have your bottom solid, but have you had any concerns with mice going and chewing on your insulation?
No, the worst thing I have is chickens that like to peck at it. So
Gotcha.
that's the real risk. Don't set it on the ground at all, because you come back, it will have new dimensions to it. So what I've got right now is I've been able to, the insulation is on and I need the insulation to complete the project. And then as we head into winter, I'm going to put chloroplast around them as well to make them more waterproof. So I'm going to paint the insulation so that rigid insulation actually has a waterproofing on the outside of that insulation. And then I'll put chloroplast around it and stuff. So they should be snug as a bug on a rug. And now we'll see how they get it through the winter.
And what is the thickness of your insulation going around the hive as opposed to the top?
It's 2 inches, 2 inches around, and then two on the top outside and 2 on the top inside.
Gotcha.
That kind of following Eli's, where Eli has a moisture layer in there with newspaper. I omitted the newspaper because it was collecting moisture, at least for me. And so I just have a 2-inch rigid foam above the top feeder. I'm using a Ceracell top feeder. And so I'm feeding, I pulled the honey supers off and switched to feeding last weekend. I'm a little late, but I was just too busy with everything else.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
the insulation that you have on the hives, is this during the summer as well as winter?
Yeah, I did it during the summer too. It's like, let's see, if it was a tree, let's try it. And so that's exactly right. I'm doing it. This is the picture. The picture that's behind me is literally what the hives look like right now.
That's interesting. I've never heard anybody doing the insulation in the summer.
Yeah. And
heard
one
that.
of my things I'm kicking around, just causing problems, is like, what if they were insulated during the heat of summer, and then on the shoulders you leave them open, because you don't have those wide temperature swings, and then as you head into freezing temperatures, you put it back on. That's another thing that I'm kicking around is, does that, are we just, trying to take the extremes off of the hive? I don't know. We'll see.
And
Interesting. Another little fact. My son has 3 hives, exactly two deep, or 2 western and 1 deep, same as mine. And he produced over 8 gallons of honey this last week, and I produced 4. And it was all his food. I mean, he got 20 some acres of blackberries, and I was kind of interesting. I mean, same bees, same nukes, and he produced twice the honey that I did just because of the food supply. So yeah, I guess that's no brainer, right, Eli?
well, we'll wait and see. This is his first year, and is he leaving enough for the bees? And is he doing the mite treatments, which actually knocked down honey production a little bit? That's one of the reasons why the commercial beekeepers don't like doing, especially like formic acid, which kills some brood and such. We're bringing up a lot of topics. So if anybody's getting lost in here, you can kind of ask me in the comments and I'll try to catch you up. The idea of it should be more like a tree, like Ty was saying, that comes out of a lot of research and thinking it through by people like Tom Seeley, well-known, Honeybee Democracy. And he talks a lot about they have a way of arranging their hive. Should we be messing with their ventilation? Should we be giving them huge entrances? They don't have two entrances on their hive. They don't choose hives like that. And even when beekeepers manage hives, they'll find the bees will often propolis up the top entrance or the bottom entrance sometimes. And the bees do not naturally do a lot of things that we are getting them to do. Those ideal tree cavities that they would be in or caves would be well insulated, and they would protect themselves from the elements and from those sudden temperature changes. Even during the summertime, we can have a 30, 40 degree drop at night. It happens in this area. Maybe it's only 30 degrees, but remember that the brood has to stay at an even temperature of 92, 94, 96, depending on who you read. Basically, our body temperature. High humidity. Bees actually need high humidity. Sometimes we're just interfering with them too much. So and the no upper entrances, I rarely use those. I have certain things I will use them for. I slide upwards, I put them in, other people don't. So this is a matter of trial and error to a certain extent and a certain amount of philosophy. And I'm for double the insulation on top that you have on the sides. And maybe you don't want to insulate the sides, but I'm insulating the tops year round. If you came out and worked on the apiary here at Maltby, you saw that. And we tried to get as much insulation on the tops of the mating nukes. And actually, I think they would have done even better. We had pretty good take the first round for mating the queens. I figured it was about 12 out of 19, that first round of queens that we got them through the grafting. They emerged and they successfully got back from their mating flights, and we could find them and find that they had mated successfully, which is a pretty good return ratio. But I think it could have even been higher had we had insulation on top of all the mating nukes. But who insulates the top of a mating nuke? Maybe.
Well, I think there's some interesting opportunities to take a look at that, because it can create new opportunities. So the one thing I will do, if you let me share a screen real quick, I'll just show you what I'm seeing, and we can do a deep coverage next time. But I can just show
here, and you go ahead.
Okay, this is what I'm seeing. This is live. Go. Did it go? Are you seeing a broodminder?
Yes.
Okay. So here's what these are the smaller hives. So these are this is a 3 deep, this is 3 mediums here. And so these are the ones that are seeing the temperature swings, are these. Now this is improved because what I did was I just took some of the rigid insulation and just set it on top of the hives. Just set it, because I didn't have time to go wrap the whole thing. I just put it on top of the hives because we have 90-degree days, and it took the peaks off of it. So some insulation. So the ones that are nice and steady, that are staying, regular, those are the larger hives or the insulated hives. This is the reference temperature. This is the scale temperature, or this is the weather temperature.
So
these are the hives. Anyway.
Should I close? Yo.
Shut it off. Yeah, turn it off.
Oops, sorry.
Too many screens up here. Eli, I'm looking to turn this thing off, and I've got too many screens. Anyway, so that's what the broodminder is doing, is it's actually showing you what's going on. So you can see, I pulled the supers off so you can see, as the weight dropped off as I pulled them down. And then this is when I put the feeders on. And then the temperature swing going on in the hives, and then the humidity. So I'll put it all together and make a short presentation for you, Eli.
Yes. Either next time or the one after. And Ty did this for his master. When do you officially finish and you have the master in your hand from University of Montana?
Yeah, they've told me that I've passed and I've got my grade, but they haven't sent me the official cert yet. So I'm waiting for the certificate to arrive.
But you are as good as Master Beekeeper right now. So congratulations to
Thank
Ty.
you.
Okay.
Thank you. Now I just have to figure out how to turn off the darn screen sharing.
Okay.
Well, while Ty is doing that, Ty, I have a question for you. When you talked about insulating the top in the summer, in the South, where we have the air conditioner going all the time, everyone's attics we have are heavily insulated because if you keep those cool, it keeps the house. Where typically in the South, you don't have that much insulation on the out, around the walls, it has to breathe. So did you think that you found the same thing happening in your hives in the summer, that with the insulation, it's helping to cool down the hive or keep it
Yes.
not so?
Oh, absolutely. And that's what the data shows. And it's particularly more effective on the smaller hives. And so the younger hives that you really want to, grow and be healthy and stuff like that, insulating them gives them a nice stable temperature, and they don't see those massive swings. The larger hives that, even if they're uninsulated, actually do okay. And I think what's going on there is the thermal mass of the honey is keeping the temperature stable inside the hives. And you also have a large population of bees too. So I think that the insulation actually has the largest effect on the smaller hives.
Okay, thank you.
And that makes sense, doesn't it? It's a big stress that you can easily cut down. Your bees are subject to stresses all the time. And it's kind of like, why did I get sick? And you're going, well, I missed some sleep and I didn't have good nutrition and I was worried about this and that. And okay, with bees, I figure they can fight off a lot of things, maybe chalk brood or EFB or something like that. They can fight it off if we help them. And,
This is just Home Depot R10 insulation, the Pink Panther type stuff. So this is not rocket science. The one thing you want to know about, though, is use a diamond blade to cut the stuff. Otherwise, you have a mess. The diamond blade works really well because it kind of melts it as it cuts it and gives you a nice straight edge. But if you try to use a normal saw blade or something like that, you got flying everywhere and rough edges, and you try to glue that together. And I used foam fusion glue, and that seems to work really well with the rigid foam, because if some of the glues you use, it actually will melt the foam. So there's a little bit of care in some of that, but I'll put that all in a presentation, Eli, for you. And
yes,
So
do
in
that.
order to check
I
the
think it's great.
hive, do you just slide it straight up and off of the hive?
what I do is there's just a tape latch type thing, because it's on 3 sides, it's all thing, and on the 4th one, it's just an extra piece of tape, Gorilla tape or whatever. And I just disconnected that, and then it sticks together. So you just open it up, and I lift, and it just lifts off and sits on the ground. So it's actually really easy to, and maybe I should do a video of it. It's really easy to move it on and off, because the top is all one big piece, and then you've got the sections. You just open it up, lift it, and I just set it it sits kind of behind the hive a little bit while I'm working with it, and then it's easy for me to just pull it back up and put it back together. It's surprisingly easy, considering all the other work you had to do.
And you have one piece underneath as well, so it's
Yeah.
insulated top, bottom, and sides.
Yep.
And just most on the top.
That's really
Wanna
interesting.
make
That's
sure
really
the top does not do that sudden cooling. Because did that make sense? Because Ty just mentioned it like everybody knew. You don't want the rain coming down. You don't want the coolest part of the hive with the bees respiring constantly and taking carbs and emitting CO2 and H2O out of a carbohydrate. And you don't want that water to rise, hit a cool surface at the top, and rain down on the brood and the cluster that can't move if it's surrounding brood.
And so the stands look like this.
Yeah, each one's individual. Oh, but wait
Yep.
a minute, you got another one. You got a different system now.
No. This was to handle the massive
okay.
hive growth
Yes.
while I built the stands.
Right.
This is an older picture, but it shows the stands. And so now all these stands here are now all lined up in a row over here. But this was when I had to quickly expand because we had swarms.
So I want to see lots of pictures of this and lots of explanation. But before we lose everybody else,
yep.
There's a lot of questions. Everybody's going, okay, the honey's still coming in. How am I supposed to do the Varroa treatments, feed, whatever? So that's coming. This has been an extended flow season. How many people are seeing record amounts of honey? And it never went into full dearth, which I warn people about a lot. A lot of people, I think, are seeing that it just the knotweed is already blooming a little bit here and there out here in South King County, and I was just up at almost Sultan. The Sultan side of Monroe, saw some of the first knotweed blooming. It's right on the edge. Fireweed was throughout the entire summer. The blackberry, I think I still have blackberry blooms here and there. Not enough that the honeybees really care, but it was a long extended flow, that rain in the middle of the summer. So when do we take these supers off and how do we feed? So you have to set your goals. I know there's a question about, okay, when? And it's part of it setting your goals. If you're not going to leave the honey, and that's legit, you know, if you have earned that, but you have to make sure they have a deep's worth of stores is the way we explain it. Yeah. And some people have all different people. So reading in the chat, try reading in there. And what are people thinking about? Okay, I'm going to leave that much on, the whole deep's worth of honey. I'm going to take some off, feed them some 2-to-1 back, and they're going to fill that space in. That thermal stability that Ty was mentioning, that if the comb is full of honey, that gives them a lot of thermal stability going into the winter and will carry them through the coldest part of the winter. If you have a lot in there, I don't think they've ever eaten up a whole deep's worth of honey before the worst of the cold was over. I don't think so. I could, except for I have one hive. I had one rogue hive that did it once, but that's a whole nother story. But yeah, you have to say, what do I want to do? And how am I going to end up with a deep's worth of honey? Even if it's funny honey, it's 2-to-1. And why are we feeding 2-to-1 instead of 1-to-1? It's so that they'll quickly pack it in. We want them to replace the honey that's worth, $1.50 an ounce or more that we really need to sell to keep our hobby going, or we really need to reward ourselves. So that's legit, but you got to make sure they have stores, which brings up the question about dry feed. Actually, that came up at Frederick Dunn's talk back a couple of weeks ago. Mustafa, I think it was. Somebody asked from Washington about, okay, why don't we just feed dry feed all the time? And that way it won't ferment.
That was me.
It won't spill. I know. I saw your name. I said, how many Mustafas in the state of Washington are there? And he always tells where you came from. And then there was somebody from Kamano Island. He couldn't pronounce. Frederick Dunn. Frederick Dunn does the Way to Be beekeeping blog, and it's fun to listen to if you're into gadgets, if you're into trying different things, little backyard experiments. He's in Pennsylvania, so he's a little bit north, but he says he basically doesn't have a dearth, which this summer I almost think I would like to hear from more people. Do you think you didn't really have a full dearth the way we've seen in the past? I kind of think so. But anyway, you have to set your goals. That may not sound like a very good answer, but the big thing to remember is at the end of whenever the end of fall comes, if you have a deep's worth of honey and pollen stores on your hive with a deep's worth of bees, you're set. And then all you have to do is keep them dry because you got them fed. Dry, fed, and treat for mites and do no harm, and you can overwinter bees. Repeat it like a mantra. Dry, fed, treated, and do no harm. Don't do any weird thing that was experimental unless you really want to risk your hives going into winter. So does that kind of, listening to what people are saying in the chat, is more, anybody in the chat want to kind of speak up now? Yeah, and some people are pulling off the honey all along. Some people are switching it, equalizing, putting some from the larger hive onto the smaller hive. Yeah. Yeah, Michael, I think, is seeing the no dearth. Would you say there's no dearth over there? Is Michael still on? No, I think Michael gave up on us. There you are.
So I've got a little bit of a dearth right now. They're when they leave off a blackberry before they start finding something else, they get a little grumpy for a week or so, and then they seem to find something else to feast on. And kind of get over it. So yeah, I've still got supers on. I just pulled last couple of weeks, and then I've still got ones that are full of nectar that aren't capped, and they'll bring me in another couple 100 pounds between now and September 15th. So I have to unstack my honey off the OAV treat and then stack it back on again afterwards. So it's a little bit of a pain in the butt, but I do get an extended flow, and I do leave 10 to 12 deep frames of honey on the hives. Last year, out of 14 hives, I only had to feed 3 of them. So they're all putting on plenty of weight down in the brood box as well.
Yeah, so you did see a little dearth, but not that much, not as much as usual.
Come again on that?
Did you see as much dearth as usual, or was it a little lower than usual?
It's a little bit more than usual this year because the fireweed blooms simultaneously with the blackberries, where usually the fireweed kicks in right at the tail end of the blackberries, and we get almost a month of fireweed. And this year, the fireweed's almost done. So I'm probably not going to get quite the flow in the late season that I had last year because of the heat.
And then if we go into knotweed, so did that sort of answer people's questions?
I'm running a bit heavier on honey this year simply because with the insulated hives, the question is whether the bees will be more active through the winter. And so I'm putting a bit of safeties on by running heavy on honey. So, you know, there's going to have at least 10 frames and medium, and then also what were the brood frames are also heavy with honey right now as well. So I should have, my plan is to go in with heavy on the honey, and I'm feeding them now, and I'm not trying to pull off as much honey, you know, as maximize my honey flow right now. I'm just trying to understand what's going on and give them some safety so I don't end up with empty hives and nothing in the spring, a bunch of starve out, you know, type situations.
Yeah, and starve out can happen for a lot of reasons. For example, last fall it was such good weather. I don't know that there was really a nectar source though in late October going into November, and the bees were still flying, and I assume they were eating up a lot of their stores. And did we finish the dry feed question? The dry feed does not give the thermal stability we're talking about. It doesn't insulate the same way as that 10 or more, like Michael says, up to 12 frames, deep frames of honey that really make a difference. They add a thermal stability that is one less stress on the bees. That much easier for the cluster to stay together and concentrate on just being a cluster and making it through the winter. Plus not starving out. And you can always harvest in the spring. Seriously. And the extractor is both extractors are very available in the spring. And it's a great time. I have actually had people request it in late spring, early summer. They go, well, I think I'll go ahead and harvest some of this honey. And some of it was from last year. And the bees will store it for you just fine. I mean, just as good as putting it in your freezer.
Yeah, the one challenge that so Eli, if you don't mind, on that same, because I sat and noodled on that a bunch too. Do I just leave it on and these type of things? But it's like, I've got good honey in the frames, on the hives, and I have the ability to feed them for the next 2 months at least. And if I can feed them well with syrup, then I can pull the honey off, and then they have the syrup to both maintain the energy levels now, so they're not eating honey to stay alive. At the same time, they can go take whatever excess and go make honey and to help carry them through the winter. So that's why I pulled the honey supers off now versus the spring, and I put them in a freezer. We went down to what I call the land of misfit toys. In Snohomish, there's the appliance place where it banged and dent toys. We call it the land of misfit toys. and for like $100, ended up with a freezer that is right now it's got 45 frames in it, and it can probably hold another 30 frames at least, and it just fits. It just fits the frames, and so that's where I did. I parked it right now because I don't have time. I've got so much to do. I don't have time to do it. I can freeze the frames, which means I'm not also having all the bees that are associated with the frames, because it's all hard to separate the bees from their honey frames, and they're going to keep showing up if I would need to take them away from the house in order to actually safely work the honey frames around here, because as soon as those frames are exposed, I mean, I either need to have a hermetically sealed room, which I imagine Michael probably has, to be able to extract the honey safely without having the bees all over me.
Usually
Okay, that's good.
end up doing it inside in a mosquito netting dining tent. Yeah, something like that. Yeah, there's a lot of creative solutions. Yeah.
So can I ask a quick question about the freezing of honey? So you freeze them, like I wrapped mine in a bag, so you keep them separate so they're not sticking together. But when I want to reintroduce it into the box, do I have to let it sit outside for a day, 3 days, and then put it in there so I don't cause temperature issues within the box?
Mine thaws faster than that.
I've never done it before, so I don't know.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So I can just stick it in there
Yes.
right out of the
You
freezer?
want to get it up to at least room temperature before you put it back in the hive. Yeah. It would be a
Okay.
temperature drop. I would.
Okay, so set it out for a day.
Yeah. It's where it's safe, this is where you end up doing it inside in a Tupperware. Yeah.
Very good, thank you.
Are we missing anything? Is everybody good on the Varroa treatments? Because I can't preach enough. I know about that. It's the easiest thing to get everything else done. You hit this time of the year, you're running out of energy, everything's so busy, and people skip it until it's too late. And we want healthy fat bees.
Hey, Eli, I have a question about the Varroa treatment. So my understanding to it is, specifically on oxalic acid treatment, where you're treating, over in the springtime from having overwintered colonies so that you get them up, and then you're doing your checks along the season, and then you're treating as part of the overwintering. Now, throughout the season, is it a practice to actually treat frequently so that you keep the population at bay, or it's typically only in the spring and the end of summer or beginning of fall?
In the spring, part of the reason is because people are getting nukes and packages, and a lot of bees are coming from out of state. And those bees are bringing loads of mites into the state. That is one of the realities. When we bring in nukes and packages, we bring in diseases and Varroa. That's the way it is. Every year we do this. So that's part of it. It's difficult to get effective treatments when you have a lot of cap brood in the hive, and that's what you have in the spring and the early summer. So even if you're trying to treat, and the only treatment that they say actually kills mites under the cap brood is very hard on the hives too. That's formic acid. So you should monitor. You should be watching drop. If you don't alcohol wash or sugar roll and count that way, people use oxalic acid year round, partly because what they do is the 3 to 5 days apart, 2 doses, double dose of oxalic acid vaporization instead of an alcohol wash. And this has now actually been put in the Journeyman's Manual, so I feel better about saying it, that we're actually using oxalic acid as a monitoring test. And then we're counting the mite drop. You don't just do it once. And I can't tell you why, but anecdotally, beekeepers all over Western Washington State, I don't know if it's elsewhere, say if you don't do it 2 times close together, the first time, for some reason, the mites don't come off. And then you do it again, and they may suddenly show up. I don't know the reason. If it kind of takes once to loosen them up, and then the second time they actually come off. And if you see nothing in too close together doses, what a lot of people do, and what I recommend, is they just wait a while and then they can check again. Oxalic acid is fairly safe. I mean, but you really shouldn't dose anything constantly for no reason at all. So I'm not really in favor of you do it every month, although I know people that do that, and that's their style of beekeeping. I kind of hate to see that, especially if they do it once. I'd rather do it less often and do the two close together for diagnostic purposes to see if there are mites on the adult bees that I can hit with the OAV. I'm thinking OAV too. Every time I talk about oxalic acid, I'm not brave enough to dribble liquid acid on my bees. I worked with acids a lot. I'm very comfortable with them, but I don't know how I would not hit the queen. And that's what worries me, is when you do the drench method, where you actually dribble sugar syrup with oxalic acid mixed into it. That makes me nervous. And I'm the kind of person who worked with the fuming sulfuric, the glacial acetic. I worked with that in labs. But just even dribbling it directly on bees just bothers me. The oxalic acid vaporization spreads evenly, as far as I can tell, throughout the hive. So I'm more comfortable. Again, this is kind of a comfort zone thing. Does that really answer your question?
It does, thank you. And I've got one last follow-up question, quick one, around methods of checking for Varroa. So I've been also looking into the CO2 one, which looks fairly similar to the sugar shake in the sense that it's harmless to bees, where you knock them out with a CO2 cartridge. Mites also will drop down and do the counts. Do you have any opinions on the CO2 injection method?
Okay, so I guess it is possible to buy small quantities of CO2 bottled. I don't think the sugar roll, it was always assumed that you were saving those bees, they would fly off, dust the sugar off, and they'd be just gone. Well, it turns out they have actually monitored that. People have actually done studies to see if that's really true. And when they did it, they found that no, they don't live as long. You've cut their life short by a certain amount by whatever it is that powdered sugar does when you use it for mite count monitoring. And so that doesn't work. CO2 probably is the same. It probably does shorten their lives. It is a stress, and they have short lives anyway. I mean, a worker bee in the summertime, you only count on maybe 6 weeks, and it could be less than that. So I'm not sure it really helps. I think it's expensive. It's an extra thing to keep on hand. So I wouldn't encourage it. On the other hand, if you do it, report back to us, okay? And tell us how it worked.
Will do. Thanks.
Okay, there's like 15 new messages. Okay.
Oh, Eli, I wanted to add to the local overwintered hives and locally produced nukes. I made it 19 out of 19 hives coming through the winter, and my mite counts were 0 to 1 or 2s, even to the nukes that I sold into late June. And so I just wanted to, you know, spread to the group. Yeah, it is a big deal, the difference between buying nukes that come out of California. And I don't treat my hives until after, or I did do representative tests, and I did do drop tests, and I have one of those Lorabee battery powered oxalic vaporizers that you can actually add extra oxalic to it in order to do drop tests, and I think that it's the best tool ever, but definitely not very affordable for small time beekeepers.
By the time you start figuring up the doses, like I said, when you pass a certain number of hives and you start adding it up, suddenly the fact that it might be $200 for this vaporizer thing starts to sound reasonable. And
$500.
You have that one. I bought I think I bought the one I just bought is what's the name of it? The Reaper. And I think it was 250, or was it 200? But you still have to get the rechargeable battery, the Milwaukee DeWalt type 12-volt battery that slides on for tools. But we have those if you have tools that are cordless. So yeah, I think there, and the local nukes, there's reasons to buy local that are not the reason I usually hear given about the genetics, locally adapted. I don't buy that at all. But lower mite load, you could trust that beekeeper was taking care of their hives because they overwintered that nuke and they knew their hives are all together. They take care of all of them. That's one reason. Another reason is they aren't stressed by being shipped. Any stress, as we know as humans, just any animal, any organism, when you stress it, it has to respond. And it's frequently a lowering of the immune system for the individual bee and for the hive. You don't have the problem of shipped queens who may have been chilled or overheated, and that may affect how long they lay or how well they lay, or if they lay worker brood at all, if they don't end up drone layers. You know, if somebody local is going to, for sure, I think, have tested their queens and not quickly shoved a queen in there, saw eggs, and shipped out that nuke with that caged queen before they ever made sure that those eggs were worker brood and not drone brood. Because that could, if a queen is a drone layer, you may not see it right away. You see an egg pattern, looks good enough. But if you wait and you see that the worker bees start nursing that brood, then you can tell. There's so many reasons to buy locally, but the genetics I don't buy. And that's the one that most people
I don't
know.
either. I completely agree with you.
But I know, and part of it's
But
because
you pay
our queens are
extra.
going up and mating with all those other ones that just came in, thousands. And in case anyone's not really thought it through, if one store buys 300 packages or nukes and a store, 20 miles away buys 300 packages or nukes, and then a bee club buys a couple hundred here, I think by the time you add it up, you start understanding we have a huge influx of disease potential, shipped queens, stressed bees, immune systems depressed by the stress. That's the reason I would go for local. And sustainability, of course.
And then your neighbor drops in 400 hives a mile away from you.
Ty would be happy to tell you all about the hives being dumped. What is it, less than a mile away?
Yeah, less than a mile away.
Yep. And they're not going to be really maintained. They're just, it's a, what do they call that? Like a way station. It's an intermediate place.
I like to think of it as a shipwreck. Oh my God.
Okay, people are discussing the EpiPens that you can easily get in Canada. Some sympathetic doctors will. Should you have one on hand? Should you not? Kind of research the Good Samaritan laws, Uh-huh. And is anyone actually catching yellow jackets in those traps? I've fallen behind on the putting the pheromone in, which I've had other people say.
I've gotten a few, but I'm switching I'm going to try a different brand.
Somebody Y is working. I used Rescue.
I've got Ys as well. They're okay.
Catching something?
Yeah, they get some.
Okay.
But I'm
Jen,
still seeing yellow jackets around.
bags. The disposal. What's the brand, Jen, on the disposal bags? Is it Rescue, Y? One of those. Maybe she'll put it in there.
Yeah, that's what I'm using. The
Rescue.
yellow ones.
Okay, so
Yeah.
Rescue is working there. And also, we have different types of yellow jackets. Does everybody realize there's not one species? I don't know. There could be a dozen species. And some of them are imported. And then they respond to different baits at different times of the year. And depending on how late the fall goes, whether the workers are looking to steal honey or if they're looking for bee larvae, there's a changeover that happens really soon. Maybe already. Let me know if the meat and fipronil works out too. See, fish. Michael's saying raw salmon is great bait. I change once a week. Yeah. People say fish, rotting fish, that yellow jackets cannot resist that. If they're still in the meat phase. And then if they're in the sweets phase fermented is supposed to work inside the traps. Switch over to fermented sweets. If you put straight sweets, your honeybees will go in, especially during dearth. But if you make it a little bit fermented, and that's why people put a little bit of apple cider or let the fruit juice ferment. Any questions we didn't do? Yeah, everybody has a sting remedy. We should have one page of just sting remedies. The one thing I forgot to mention, oh dear, now the meeting's almost entirely over and I should probably stop the recording. I forgot to mention, anybody who wants to sell honey that just would like their name put on a list, you're a member of the club, send it in. I will put it on the Facebook discussion group, and I should probably stop the recording since we are kind of all signing off now. Let me do that.